Mousekast podcast, may the fourth you be with. Cinco de Mayo on Monday tonight. Revenge of the Six. This is where the mind meets the magic. We dive a little deeper every time. Theme parks, cruise ships, and travel. If you don't listen, maybe now it's time. Tonight we go to a galaxy that may be far, far away. But when we get to visit, we always love to play. And then tonight we go to a galaxy that may be far, far away. But when we get to visit, we always love to play. And
hello and welcome to Mousekast, the podcast where the mind meets the magic. The force is very strong with us tonight. It is Revenge of the 6th. In honor of Star Wars Day, which was just a few days ago, we are talking all about Star Wars tonight. And joining me tonight is our great Jedi Council. First of all, let's introduce our Padawan first. Hawk, how are you doing?
I'm doing quite well. This is the way, and I'm very excited.
This is the way, and I have spoken.
You have.
I have spoken. So,
and you will again.
And I will again. That's right. Jedi Master Megan, how are you?
I'm doing well, and I'd like to say that Chuck and Hawk will behave tonight, but I doubt that's going to happen.
Mind tricks don't work on me. Only money. Hey, Matt. How are you doing, my good friend Jedi Matt?
Chuck, I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate.
What does that make us?
Absolutely nothing.
Ah! The Schwartz is strong with this one over here. So, love a good Spaceballs reference too as well. And we got some folks joining with us. Hey, Chris is already on the in the chat tonight. Hey, Chris, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Good evening, Sean. Good to see you.
Absolutely. So we are talking all about Star Wars Celebration. So coming up at the end of April, just a couple of weeks, not even a few weeks ago, Star Wars Celebration over in Tokyo, Japan. For those who went over there, first of all, understand that I'm insanely jealous of you. That in fact you went to Tokyo Disney Sea without me. But there were a bunch of announcements that were made at Star Wars Celebration. Let me run through just a couple quick ones, and then we're going to start to talk about some of the... We're not necessarily going to go through all of them in detail, but there's definitely a couple that are related to the parks. And we're also going to talk about... Hawk had a little took a little field trip to Galaxy's Edge on Star Wars Day. A brave soul he was, I will tell you that. First and foremost, though, let's go over a couple of the announcements from Star Wars Celebration. First and foremost, and probably the greatest interest to all of us here on this podcast, because we're all Parks fans, new updates are coming to Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. There will be some new missions added featuring Mando and Grogu, and this is obviously in advance of the new Mando and Grogu movie that is coming out about this time, May of 2026, late May of 2026. New destinations are coming, including Bespin, Endor, Coruscant. Yeah, there's Mando right there. Hawk's demonstrating him. And then for those of you who, especially if you do single rider over at Smuggler's Run, you know that you end up getting that wonderful engineer's seat. Well, there are new tasks that are going to be coming for the engineers. So the engineer's job is going to get a little bit more interesting because you engineers, you're going to be interacting with Grogu himself, and you're going to be doing... they don't give a lot of detail about it, but it kind of seems like you're plotting some courses and choosing maybe the next planet that we go to. Maybe you're making some hyperspace calculations or some things like that here. So could be very, very interesting. And again, we're going to jump into a lot more detail about that here in a couple of minutes. A couple other quick announcements that they talked about. A new movie coming, Star Wars Starfighter with Ryan Gosling. That's going to be coming out Memorial Day of 2027, and it will take place 5 years after The Rise of Skywalker. As we mentioned, Mando and Grogu coming out May 22nd, 2026. There were a few other updates that were talked about, mostly introducing some cast and some characters. And then Ahsoka Season 2, for some of you who are very big into Ahsoka, the Disney Plus series. A couple of announcements. One, Rory McCann of the who is well known for some HBO series. He is going to be replacing Ray Stevenson. The great Cy, and as we mourn the loss of Ray Stevenson, he will be playing Rory McCann. Will be playing Balin Skrull. And then Anakin Hayden Christensen will be making a return. Admiral Akbar will be returning as well to face Thrawn. And Zeb, a popular character from the Rebels series, also will be part of Ahsoka Season 2. So those are your announcements. So first of all, let's get to Star Wars Day. Hawk, tell us all about being in Galaxy's Edge. I imagine there were a few friends that were there with you that day.
So I will say we got in fairly early in the afternoon, but not super early. We didn't open the park. The lines for the popcorn buckets and specialized merchandise this year were insane. The Death Star popcorn bucket and the Stormtrooper popcorn bucket were both amazingly well done. The Death Star, the way it lights up, everything.
That thing really looks cool.
It was really neat. And seeing them at night, you can kind of see in my screen behind me, that was the lightsaber meetup in front of the Falcon at about 8 p.m., right after the sunset. And there were hundreds of people out there that create a rainbow of lightsabers. It's really just an amazing experience. But the merch was really good this year. They had a Jawa sipper that was very popular. Also huge waits for that. They used the mobile order and mobile purchasing, so you could just kind of line up and go get your purchased item once they verified you in fact bought it, which streamlined some of the processes, which was really nice. I got to give Hollywood Studios a lot of credit because over the last year, this day has turned into more and more of a big event. It gets bigger every year, and I think it was exacerbated by the last couple of years with it falling on weekend nights. So I think that added to the crowds that wind up being there. But Galaxy's Edge itself reached capacity by 7 p.m. They were, you had to walk. There was one way to walk in and one way to walk out. They created a giant kind of circle. You could wait, and as capacity exited, they would allow more people in. It created quite an interesting flow. Before that initial rush as it approached sunset, they were stopping people, and unless you had an active reservation or a lightning lane, you were not getting past the security, and they were very strict about it. They had divided walkways into traffic staying entirely on the right or the left, depending on the lane of traffic, and had management and cast members lined as far as the eye could see through every part of Galaxy's Edge to keep it under control. There was increased security. They did a phenomenal job. And I think there has been some overwhelmed situations in the last couple of years that resulted in them really stepping up their game this year. They brought back the lightsaber churros, artificial food dye, yes, but fun and awesome, yes, also. And like, is a churro really starting out healthy for you anyhow? Come on, I'm just going to say it. But absolutely amazing with the lightsaber churros. They also had beverages with miniature lightsabers. During the lightsaber meetup at the end, when everybody has their sabers up, there were a few dozen little minis being lit and held in the air. So kudos to the people that had a good sense of humor and really had a great time. But Disney has greatly stepped up merch, preparation, just the overall organization within the confines of Galaxy's Edge. The milk stand had a ridiculous line. There was additional queuing brought out to keep it organized. For the popcorn stands and some of the side stations, there was additional queuing brought out. Oga's Cantina did something that I thought was really amazing, and they actually created a standby queue so you could order beverages to go. And it still took
Wow.
Tina and I got in line to do it, and it took us about, I'd say maybe 30 minutes to get through the line.
That's just for the to-goes.
Yeah, just for the to-goes.
Uh-huh.
But it took us about 30 minutes. They let 2 people in at a time. Let me see if I can show you this.
Yeah, so was this for non-alcoholic or alcoholic as well?
Yeah, that I'm honestly not sure, because I was curious how that worked. But I think it was also
it was
alcohol.
Both of them. Okay.
You know, I think they did legitimately allow that. So let me see if
and while you're looking that up, as you're describing this, it really starts to bring to mind something that we haven't seen at Hollywood Studios in a long time, and those are the old Star Wars weekends where they really did amp up everything related to Star Wars. Now, granted, Galaxy's Edge didn't exist back then. This was there wasn't even the launch bay back then for a lot of Star Wars weekends. So, but I do like the fact that you're seeing some more attention to special event merchandise, a la kind of similar to Star Wars weekends.
And also, Chuck, they had a couple of unique meet and greets. Now, the bartender took a photo for us. You can see they have a pay station right there, and we get paper cups. So you're literally at the front door, and if you look to the left over here, there is a cast member that stands and watches you and makes sure you order your drinks, you pay, and tip the bartender well, because Olga wants her credits. You always need to give Olga your credits. But they immediately come over and check with you once you paid, make sure you have a moment to take a couple pictures, and then they usher you out and bring the next party in. And it's two people at a time. Sometimes if a party of 4 is there, my daughter got the milk and the cookie that come with it. And we went out, started walking around the park. You get people amazingly dressed up, like great cosplay going on through the weekends. One of my favorite things about May the 4th is the quality of cosplay that takes place in the parks. And they're good about not enforcing some of the rules that would normally be a no-no going into the park, and letting people really kind of get into it.
It's almost like Halloween night, like Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party kind of rules. They kind of relax
My favorite was the lounge fly on this guy's back. They were like 100% legit, and then went to the lounge fly. I complimented him. I was like, "This is amazing. You were, it was the best." But some of these people are really decked out and really enjoying it, and it brings I think one of the things that is missing on an average day in Galaxy's Edge is that feeling as though you're dressed like you're in Florida, you're walking around. When you see hundreds of people walking around in costume, it brings so much reality to it. It just is such an immersive experience, and it really makes it so fun. And I know there's a lot of people out there that aren't fans of Star Wars necessarily. If you get the opportunity to go to the parks on one of these days, just really go check it out. It is almost like a Comic-Con.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Chris says he'd love to do Galaxy's Edge Star Wars Day, and I think you're right. It is kind of like Comic-Con. It almost makes me wonder if maybe this is something that Disney needs to think about scheduling, not just for Star Wars Day, May the 4th, almost to the point of, hey, we now have a Star Wars land. Let's bring back Star Wars weekends.
Yeah, I think that's been a collective thought process with Disney. Like fans have been clamoring for that since they've gone away. It was one of the highlights. They did have a couple of unique meet and greets too. They actually had Chopper out meeting people, where you could do photos in Old Launch Bay. Chopper was where they have the little cantina set up where the Jawas used to meet, and where you'd sometimes have actual different photo opportunities. Um, you know, nice to see you, Mark. Thank you.
Hey,
for
Mark, good to see you. Buddy Mark Jones is here tonight. May the force be with you.
But the droids, like, I want you to look at this picture. Custom droids that people have made. Like, there was a Grimace droid done with a McDonald's carry case. It was like incredibly well done. You can see some of the other ones. I'll zoom in a little bit. But what they did in
Oh,
these
look at the Wizard of Oz droids. Or
And
the Wicked droids. That's pretty cool.
and they functioned, and it was just to see how creative people get and how much they love experience in the parks and showing these off with other people. It just creates a unique and amazing environment. I mean, the detail people put into these is incredible. Full garb, some of these people. It's 90 degrees on May 4th on Sunday night. And we had people walking around that I was like, I know they are just dying from the heat, but they're so dedicated to this. And it's such a respectful thing. Everybody was so kind. It's really enjoyable. They all light their lightsabers at the same time.
That had to be an awesome moment right there.
So some of the things that happen are just so incredibly well done that weekend. And the crowds are insane. If you are anxious in heavy crowds like New Year's or 4th of July or May the 4th, you're going to struggle a little bit, and just be advised of it. But you can still find areas of the park. We still found places to go sit down and just people watch off to the side. If you're down where they're having the lightsaber meetup, it gets tight around the Falcon. But there was hundreds this year of people walking around with lightsabers out by Rise, out by the Muppets, outside and my favorite thing of the whole night, Chuck, was going over to the old Jedi training area where they used to do the Jedi training with the kids. And there was about
out by Star Tours.
Yep. And there was about 30 people out there with their lightsabers training and flipping and doing everything. And I was like, you guys are awesome.
Yeah, see, this gets me back to
back.
Yeah, this gets me back to Star Wars weekends. And, Matt, I don't know if you ever had a chance when you were, again, it's been a while since we've had a Star Wars weekends, but would this be something that you would be, you or Megan, would this say, okay, I want to get down? In fact, Mark Jones agrees. He says he misses Jedi training. It was always fun to watch the kids. And I remember I had my kids doing the Jedi training. Again, these were years ago when it was Star Wars weekends. Megan and Matt, would this be something that would draw you down? Let's say that there was a Star Wars weekends in October, or something like that. Maybe, hey, as I'm kind of blue skying here, maybe a separate event that's not ticketed, but it's just a side-along event. Couldn't get into Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. Here's also Star Wars weekends one weekend, or something along those lines. Would that draw you guys down?
Me personally, probably not. It depends on the time of year, like you said. Like in October, Halloween's going to draw me down, or if I go towards the end of October, beginning of November, I'm going to cross over into Christmas. So I don't think a Star Wars event for me personally would necessarily draw me down. It'd be more of, I hate to say, a bigger event in a way between the Christmas party and the Halloween parties and stuff like that. But from what I've seen, I mean, it'd be an amazing time.
Would you be interested in seeing it though? Like maybe it wouldn't make you take a trip down, but would you like to experience that if it happened while you were there?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, It looks like an amazing time. Even just being outside of, not in the big Star Wars bubble. I'm 2 movies in 37 years. So I've got some catching up to do, but it's definitely something all the pictures and videos that I've seen, it sounds like a fantastic experience something completely different than, we've done the parties and stuff like that, and this is just something completely different.
Yeah, Chris says, give me one day at Hollywood Studios. I would love to immerse myself in Star Wars for a whole day if they brought back Star Wars weekends. Chris, me personally, I'm with you. Bring it back right now, multiple times a year. Go for it. In fact, we just asked this question, and what kind of return of Star Wars weekends, or some kind of return, would it make you do a special trip to Walt Disney World? And we've got folks that are here. Mark's here, and Chris is here. Others that may be watching. If you haven't commented yet, share your comments. And Megan, is this something? What about you? Would this be something you would make a special trip down?
I would love to see Star Wars weekends come back. Absolutely, 100%. They were a huge hit. The fans love them. What I really love about May 4th, though, is that the fans, if I'm correct, are the one that put together. They're the ones that started organizing the lightsabers and all of that to begin with. What I love about May the 4th is the collaboration that ends up happening between the fans and Disney, because the fans put this thing together and it amped up, like Hot said, it's amped up over the years, and Disney has accepted it. They're downplaying the rules on the costumes. They got the merchandise, so they're still a business. They're still making money, but they're giving the fans what they want, and they're working in accordance with them. The Ogas situation, I think that's brilliant. It's great. Everybody's going to want Ogas. Everybody's there for this. And so they've accommodated, like, okay, you couldn't get a reservation. Fine. We're still going to let you in. You get your pictures, you get your drinks. I love the cooperation between the fans and the Disney executives on this. It feels a little bit like the pin trading to me, where fans took off and were like, oh my gosh, we're going to start trading pins, and so Disney was like, okay, we're going to build places for you to do this, and we're going to have events because this is great. And they made it a community. And so that's the Star Wars weekends, I think, are fantastic. I would bring them back 100%. They're good for the people who love Star Wars. They're good for Disney on the money side. But I love the collaborative magic that happens with something like May the 4th, where the fans started something and Disney looked at that and said, you know what? We can get behind this. Let them go. We'll bring in the extra security. We'll bring in stuff to make sure that things are, that work. But we're going to lean into this. And it's the fans' idea. And it's not, they haven't made it a ticketed event. They certainly could, right? People would pay to get into Galaxy's Edge and do a big May the 4th. And Disney hasn't.
Stop giving them ideas, Megan. Stop giving them ideas.
But hopefully, they've jumped on this and they're like, you know what? This is great. The fans want this, and we're going to give it to them. We're going to let them have it. I think.
Okay, so let me throw out a hypothetical for you. What if it was a fan thing. There's a concern about crowds, as Mark talked about crowds here. Would it change if it was a ticketed event and it was more to it? I mean, you got more with it and some more inclusions with it. Just kind of blue skying around here.
Well, I'm going to say that having attended a couple of May the 4ths now at Hollywood Studios, I'm going to tell you one, they would be remiss to try to privatize this event, because even if it brings in the added money for people coming in, they're going to have to limit attendance. So you're doing this. Everybody in there.
See, that's where I'm wondering about a ticketed event, because that's how you limit it.
Everybody in there was dropping huge money on souvenirs, I saw people walking out with so much stuff. That's going to shrink the amount of stuff people are buying while they're in there if you're making it a ticketed event. Now, you're still going to probably offer the lightsabers and the droid building and everything else. But do you bite your nose to spite your face to do that? And to your point, there's enough of a fan base. I think it would be better to bring back Star Wars weekends as a more private event in the evenings than to do it on May the 4th, where it has organically grown. And I think you risk alienating the fan base that has created this literal amazing event that takes place in Galaxy's Edge every 4th of May. So I personally would discourage them from making this a special event.
You're talking about specifically for May the 4th, but then
Yeah. No, correct.
other times.
But in other times, I think bringing some kind of special event and bringing it back where, fans could get some of what they really clamor for with specialized characters out on Galaxy's Edge, some of the original characters. Like, if I could watch Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker walk through Galaxy's Edge with R2-D2 and C-3PO behind them by the Falcon and see Han Solo wave its on. Come on. Come on.
Bring it back to classic characters, yeah.
Take all my money, sign me up.
Yeah, Mark.
No, exactly. We're the generation that's what we grew up with, and that's what Star Wars is. Other generations that have come, and I understand Disney does generally cater to youth, but those classics, Disney has struggled with what to do with Star Wars since buying it. They have made some brilliant moves with The Mandalorian and other things, but they have also had flops. They have also had struggles with storyline. They have had struggles with attracting even more new fans, bridging the generational gaps. So what made Star Wars great? Don't lose that focus, because everybody's favorite character to meet in Galaxy's Edge is Chewbacca. Everybody loves Chewie. You can't not love Chewie. But if Chewie walked around Galaxy's Edge with Han Solo and R2-D2 and C-3PO,
yeah, it'd be awesome.
You'd be drooling over yourself to run in there. You'd be going crazy.
Yeah.
And even Matt's shaking it. I'm not a big fan of Star Wars. He's like, I'm there. I'm going in. So
yeah, Mark Jones had a couple of great comments here. He said that feels like Disney is finally listening with changes to Galaxy's Edge and the content they're talking about. But then he also says, I think one of the appeals of the 4th, Hawk, to what you were saying, is the organic nature of how it happened, and making that a ticketed event, to echo what you were saying, would put a cloud over the whole day in his opinion. And of course, at that point, it would just look like Disney's just trying to make money off his friends. And Chris agrees with Hawk, which I do too. I think I like the idea of both. I think it needs to be a kind of, to use Mark's word there, it needs to be very organic. You could have both, actually. You could have a May the 4th fans, just y'all come, and then you could also do okay, this is Revenge of the, you could do this on Cinco de Mayo, or like today, Revenge of the 6th, and it's a ticketed event that you continue the momentum and allow that to go, and then maybe have another event sometime in the fall or something like that, maybe to piggyback off of things that are happening in the Magic Kingdom, to try to, again, encourage folks to be in two parks in the evenings. So any final thoughts about, kind of May the 4th? We're going to get ready to talk about all the changes to Smuggler's Run here in a second. But any final thoughts on the May the 4th?
I think the one thing that frustrates me a little bit with Disney right now is, in my opinion, Star Tours should have been moved, or at least the AT-ATs out front, the ATs out front, they should have been brought into Galaxy's Edge. Like they should have made that move. Launch Bay should have been dissolved, and there should have been an area that was built to create those meet and greets within Galaxy's Edge. One thing I think Disney has shot themselves in the foot with is just making it logistically difficult to do these things, because they were already in place. And then, Galaxy's Edge became an afterthought to Star Tours. But at the same time, for the money that they invested into that project, you would think that the move would have taken place, especially with the blue sky ideas that were already on the board for the future for the parks. You would think that a consolidation would have taken place to put everything in Galaxy's Edge together. And I think that would have really added to the immersion of the land, because it's still kind of awkward to walk out of Galaxy's Edge, see Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy, and then go right back to, I'm gonna go ride Star Tours now.
Soon to be Mike and Sully. That you're
Yeah,
gonna
No,
it's
true story. I mean, but the continuity of the lands and some of the choices Disney has made doesn't flow well. And I hope that as Disney moves forward with starting to do some of these lands that have been announced in D23, that they create some level of continuity between parks and locations and where they're choosing to do things, so you don't have this spread out debacle of a certain theme that you're trying to pull together and unite.
and it's you bring that up, and it brings up the question I had way back when Galaxy's Edge was first being announced. Why they didn't take out Muppets at that time and do the move Muppets over to where Launch Bay is now, because I mean, Muppets, folks, it's a theater. I mean, you can recreate it, but it's a theater essentially, and that whole space you could have built all of that. But I know Mark says back then Muppets area was untouchable. We'll see, but hindsight being 2020, I think maybe that was a short-sighted thing. But nevertheless, we are where we are. One of the interesting things, though, that is here is all of the immense and immersive attractions that we have over in Galaxy's Edge, and one of those immersive attractions, of course, is Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. And as we talked about at the beginning of the show, at Star Wars Celebration, announcements were made about some very big changes coming to Smuggler's Run, roughly this time next year. I think the general consensus is going to be about this time next year. So, as we said, new mission, Mando and Grogu are coming, and apparently the story is that Hondo has kind of some new things. So Hondo is still going to be around, but he has some new assignments and some new deals he's making, and he needs some help from Mando and Grogu to pull this off. And we're now going to have new destinations. Bespin, Endor, Coruscant. That's not necessarily the whole list. It kind of, in the announcement, it kind of led me to think that maybe there may be others. And new tasks for the engineers, including interacting with Grogu. And this thing, I'm kind of hung on this about choosing the next planet. It makes me wonder, going back to things like Star Tours, is this going to be almost a Star Tours and go back to Horizons? We're going to go way, way back. If you remember, at the very end of Horizons, you had a choose your ending, majority rules kind of thing like that. I wonder if we're kind of seeing that concept return, where in the six of you that are in that, or however many, but usually it's the six that are in that Millennium Falcon cockpit, you're choosing which planet, or maybe it chooses it for you based upon whatever actions take place. But a la Star Tours, I think you're going to have the rewritability factor is going to go really jump way, way up, because it's not going to be the same thing every time.
I think you're going to see similar to Star Tours. And I think, that being said, you also may see the demise of Star Tours in short order. I wouldn't be surprised if they start breaking into new technology. Star Tours is a little dated now. If the Millennium Falcon starts to bring in multiple options, I wouldn't be surprised. What's the purpose of having both at that point? Like, I really think it will change a little bit. Mark even says, they've made Smuggler's Run more like Star Tours. It greatly increases the rewritability. Love Smuggler's Run, but it has become a little boring. They understand that that's happening. That's why you can almost always walk on to Smuggler's Run. It's an easy ride to get into. Even on May the 4th, it was easy to get into, especially later while everyone was getting outside with the lightsabers. As a matter of fact, there was a moment where in the window up into the queue of Smuggler's Run, my daughter and I saw two lightsabers dueling up in the window of the queue. So there couldn't have been a huge crowd in there, because two people were having at it in their Jedi warfare while waiting in line for Smuggler's Run. So, Matt, is Smuggler's Run something you enjoy riding? Like, do you like that ride?
I love that ride. I've been on it a few times, and I basically have everybody in stitches when we ride that ride. I just kind of get really into it and start cracking jokes, and even complete strangers, I'll have them laughing at the end of the ride. So I love watching my daughter be a pilot, and she's trying her best, and it's just really fun to watch, even though she has no idea what she's doing. And I'm sitting there as a gunner just trying to blast anything that I can. So it's a really fun, interactive ride. And when I saw the changes they were making, first thing I thought of was Star Tours and all the different updates to the scenes that they were making. I kind of hope that they continue doing that with Smuggler's Run, with different interactions and different, what's the one I'm looking for?
Different
tasks and stuff like that.
Yeah, gotcha.
So,
and it does sound like that's coming. And I think that's one of the cool things, because to Chuck's point earlier, the engineer role, when you're back there, if you ride the single rider line, you're like, donk, 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 donk. It's kind of boring. And you're having to focus on watching the lights on the wall so much that you really don't get to experience the ride. Mm-hmm. And, I finally started saying, screw it, I don't care about my score on this. I want to see what's happening on the ride. And, I'm glad they're doing this stuff, because the queue for that ride is so incredible, all the way up to when you're sitting in the Falcon right before you board, and you can play on the game table, mm-hmm. and you're
even the single rider queue. I mean, both of them. Usually a single rider queue, you're just bypassing everything, but even the single rider queue is really cool.
So Megan, you're not a huge Star Wars fan. Your friend was. I
love the movies. I can't do all the TV shows. I'm one season behind The Mandalorian. I need to get caught up there. But so the first time I ever rode Smuggler's Run, I was an engineer. Same deal. I spent the whole time trying to hit those buttons, had no idea what was going on with the ride. What I'm also hoping is that by putting Grogu in the engineer spot, not only is that person who's in that seat more interactive, more involved in the storyline, and knows more what's going on, and maybe has a little bit of control back there, but I know that some people have complained about riding it when you get kids in the driver's seats as pilots, because things just don't go as well, and it's not as entertaining, and it's not as fun. You put Grogu in the engineer seat, some of those kids are going to want to sit back with Grogu and do that job. And now maybe you can slide some adults into the pilot seat. Maybe you got a little bit more chance of getting out of there without everybody yelling at you for, ruining the Millennium Falcon. So it may not be
Look, you can tell Matt's the one with the two little kids. Megan, you're the parent that's too competitive. You're like, no, you're a gunner.
Exactly.
No, you're a gunner.
No, I'm driving. Let the adults drive. I'll pilot the thing. So I'm looking forward to, definitely seeing that role pulled much more into the storyline and the action of what's happening in there. So it's not just boring and you don't just get stuck back there. And single riders, yes, the purpose of a single rider is to fill space, but that person should not have to suffer every single time by being the engineer. You should have some shot as a single rider to end up in the pilot's seat or as a gunner.
Well, that's happened before. So, and Mark Jones, actually, he'll probably hop it in the chat, because he told me the story one time where he was doing single rider, and he kind of talked to the cast member and said, I'm always an engineer, any chance? And he said, don't worry, we'll take care of you. Now, it took a little while for him to, and then they made him a pilot. So, because again, there is something to be said when you're that pilot and you are pulling that hyperspace lever and, putting the Falcon into hyperspace is pretty cool.
However, to the point, much like Hagrid's at Universal, if you stood in that regular queue and waited, and then someone else waited 20 minutes because they're in single rider line, I wait in that line so I can be the pilot. I wait in that line so I can ride the motorcycle. I make that choice. If you take the shortcut you suffer the consequence. And I'm sorry, but that's the way the
Well,
system.
I will admit to Mark's point, it was a very low ride time. It was like a 20-minute wait time, so it was very low. So I mean,
No. I'm just stating I agree with the systems as they're in place because I think that is more fair to the people because a lot of people will wait for the opportunity to be a pilot. To Megan's point, there's a ton of people that are hyper competitive on that ride. I'm like, it's a ride, like I know Chuck and I like to max out on Buzz Lightyear, but I don't care how much
Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah,
and he almost pulled it off last week.
I got.
Yeah,
but
I'm not
using coaxium in real life. Let the kids have fun. To Matt's point, let them crash.
So here's one other piece to this, and we'll talk about the pilots here. We have new destinations. And these are all where before we were going somewhere that frankly we didn't really know about. It's just a Star Wars world, and mostly a very tech world with, we're trying to shoot a train. We're going to Bespin. We're going to Endor. We're going to Coruscant. These are places that we know. So you have to wonder, and to Mark also put up an interesting point here, they're upgrading to the new Unreal Engine. So the graphics, while they're already good, they're going to be even that much better. How much more of a visual experience this will be going to destinations that we actually know and understand and can really resonate to versus the story we have right now, which is not a bad story, but we're not going somewhere that we really know.
And Chuck, honestly, real quick to Mark's point with this, I thought this was a very good comment because this is something that just gets overlooked way too much in theme parks. Be nice to the cast members. Like, nobody is obligated. You are the same customer as anyone else in that line to them. Everybody paid to get into that park that day. Everybody. The entitlement aspect gets very extreme, and cast members deal with a lot of people that complain about little things and everything else. And, we do our thank you cards to cast members. We give them out all the time. But, they're not going to hook you up just because you're nice to them. I do understand his point here because he's saying they don't always do it, but they can make magic happen. And some of the most special memories I've had the opportunity to have with my daughter when she was young were because we were kind to cast members, took a moment to ask them their story, what brought them to Disney, learn a little bit about their life, or in the case of Galaxy's Edge, what brought them to Batuu from planet Earth? What let them come into another world? And when you take the time for that little moment to give someone some grace, and if you see a cast member having a bad day, give them some appreciation. Show them that you truly appreciate what they do. Some opportunities may happen, maybe they don't, but I guarantee you that cast member is going to give you a smile and say thank you for caring. And that really has to happen more in the parks. We are in a very entitled world right now.
Yeah, and especially, go ahead, Megan.
I was just gonna say, it also allows them to play that character because, like Hawk said, ask them what brought them to Batuu. They have a story. They're in character, and they will play it to the hilt. And that's part of the magic.
That's what I was going to talk about too.
But it is so much. I mean, they are unshakable. It is
the bartenders and the ogres. The bartenders and the ogres have the best stories. They're the best, hands down, the best at it. Everybody.
And as you're out there, as you're out and about, tell them, hey, good day. But then you say bright suns, or at night it's rising moons. And as you're departing, till the spire. There's a whole language of Batuu that is there. And in fact, there's a book that's out that's actually, I have it in an audiobook version that is all about Galaxy's Edge and about, the Batuu and Black Spire Outpost.
So
there's a whole story behind it. Yeah.
And
what's that?
The Arabish translator.
Arabish, yep.
You can
the translator, and you use your Disney, your Play Disney app, and you go through and use the data.
Data pad.
Yeah, the data pad. Thank you. The data pad. I'll tell you what. I mean, that alone, we could actually do a whole show just talking about what you could do with the data pad. You could spend an entire day in Galaxy's Edge, not ride one story, not do one meet and greet, not do anything, but do data pad the entire day. Apparently, yeah. There you go. Right there. He's already
Bounty
done.
hunting is a complicated profession.
Because he's not competitive or anything.
Yeah, no. Chris says he forgot their names, but had an awesome interaction with a mother-daughter team at Oga's back in 2022, and they were so into character, it was incredible. See, Chris, this is exactly what we're talking about right here. I think... So here's the thing. Everybody remembers Hollywood Studios and how much we lament the loss of Streetmosphere, but in some respects, we got it back. It's just over in Galaxy's Edge, and there's all kinds of Streetmosphere characters there to interact with and play with and have fun with. And so, do that.
And if you take the time to stand outside, Kylo Ren and the Stormtroopers make their runs through Galaxy's Edge, but Chewbacca and Rey and Vimerati are also walking around out there. So you have the opportunity to see the rebellion. You also have the chance to see members of the dark side, and you can walk around and watching them. Jen and I caught one the other day where Chewie and Kylo and Vimerati, they're all in the same place, and Chewie and Vi and Rey ran away to hide, and it was just this amazing experience where they're running around trying to hide. We're looking at different stuff. We're trying to, they're like, make sure Kylo doesn't see us. Make sure he doesn't see us. And I got this great picture of, and I'll show you real quick. This is straight out of a movie scene. They're trying to look to make sure Kylo's walking away. And as the crowd is sitting there all around, 200 people lined up in front of Chewie and Rey. And we're standing to protect them from Kylo. And the kids, like there's always some little kid that really wants to be with Darth Vader and runs over and tells on him. And then, he's like, Kylo, they're over there. They're over there. And, but the characters are so into it. And it's such a great experience. And the immersion that goes into making you feel like you're part of the experience in Galaxy's Edge if you slow down enough to let it happen around you. And you have to not just run from one ride to the next, because some of the most impressive magic is in these little moments and in these little stories, and learning about some of the Easter eggs, like the hidden Millennium Falcon on the Millennium Falcon. There's a little tiny Millennium Falcon stashed just under the cockpit on a pipe. And if you look real close, you can find it. And, Galaxy's Edge was formerly Lights Motor Action. The bulk of the area that it's in was formerly the Lights Motor Action stunt show. The middle, there's by the bathrooms and the spire, and there's 3 speeders in the middle of the Tall Spire outpost that are over on the wall. The middle one is a green speeder, and there's 3 little white letters on it in Arabesh, but they spell out LMA, and it's one of the Hayabusa motorcycles that was utilized in the Lights Motor Action show. So learning those little Easter eggs are super important to you gaining new experiences and finding little tidbits that make it more interesting for your kids as well. When you can give them a little history and a little bit of information, then they start to look for these things. And that's when Disney World truly starts to become magical. It's not just running to the rides. It's all the little details, the Easter eggs, the nods, the little hidden gems, the hidden Mickeys, all the things we can talk about. That's an incredible thing about this kind of experience.
Well, and on top of that, go ahead, Megan.
I was just going to say, it's so well done in Batuu. And I think as much as we love it, I think it's also the thing that makes some of us nervous as Disney starts preparing for these new lands, because are they going to go there? Are they going to keep pushing as much as they did with Galaxy's Edge? Because they gave us that and we love it and it's phenomenal. But are they going to follow it up with more? Or are we going to see it die? Are we going to lose a little bit of that? So I think Galaxy's Edge, as great as it is it in itself, I think it makes me at least a little apprehensive about what's coming next and if they're going to continue on with all that magic that they gave us there. If we're going to, I don't know, see some of it fizzle, which would be
just real quick. I know we're talking Star Wars, but when you say that, you bring up a very interesting point. So my biggest concern for Disney in that realm is what they do with Villains Land. That's my biggest one. 100%. Would you all agree that that is the one that is going to be the make or break land for Disney in the next 5 years?
The newest one, yes, absolutely, without a doubt. And I think it's because they already have the template for Galaxy's Edge, because Galaxy's Edge, when they said, hey, we're going to build a Star Wars land, it was make or break because you had to get this right. Well, they're back again. This is the exact same scenario. You're doing a land that fans have wanted maybe even longer than they've wanted Star Wars at the parks. You got to get this right. So, the good news is they've done it once. Go ahead, Matt.
Never mind a land. They want a whole park.
Well, you're right.
So they even consolidate a park into just a land for what fans want. I mean, they're going to have to hit this beyond out of the park, and especially with Epic Universe just opening, and what I've seen online is
in 2 weeks show we'll be discussing that.
As I say, 2 weeks we'll be talking about that.
Right.
So we'll be talking all about Epic Universe in 2 weeks. So
I think the other one next to Villains for me is going to be Montropolis, because it's right next to Galaxy's Edge. And so just like Toy Story Land, you're walking from one to the other. I love Toy Story Land, but you do not get the same I don't get the same immersive feeling in that land like I get with Batuu. You lose a little bit as you move between. And if we lose it going into Monstropolis as well, so I think
I'll challenge you on that one, because the one difference between when you look at transitions, okay, and the transition between Galaxy's Edge to Toy Story Land, it's just open, and it's the only real transition you get is an audio transition from soundtracks, and there's a little bit of a whine. On the other end, though, when you're going from Galaxy's Edge to the Grand Avenue, which is what currently is Muppets area, you're actually passing through, a la Epic Universe, a portal. That concept. So you're hoping, Mark is right. I hope they remember to build Shade in the Lulands. Yeah, they definitely need that. But you are transitioning through that. They're not going to get rid of that. So, I think that will be a huge help in creating the transition. My concern, and Hawk talked about it earlier in the show, is the other direction, is the transition from Monstropolis back to Star Tours. I don't know that they're going to move Star Tours. That's a big thing to move or to lose. And the story of Star Tours is slightly different in the fact that it's a set, not an actual destination. That it's being created as a set, because as you're doing that queue through Endor, you're seeing the backside of the whole set and everything like that. So it's much more the movie side of it. I get you. There's a bit of confusion now that's created because of that.
But Chuck, if you're going to see, and this is, and Mark brought it up earlier, he misses the Jedi Training Academy, because watching the kids do that was an amazing thing. I think Disney eliminated some of the things that could have justified it staying where it's at. That is now a dead corner. Like, when you go there during the day, there is nothing going on the old Jedi platform. There's people grabbing their sandwiches, sitting on, when there's no tables available for the quick service, but there's almost always tables available there. It's just people sitting, taking breaks, and it doesn't add to the aesthetic.
I know, I agree with you completely. Area. It needs to be reused in some way. Again, I'm saying bring it back, because it was very, very popular, but I guess there were reasons they didn't do it. But
I think they could bring it back. And I think you can bring it back safely. I think, there was some issues, I understand the thought process, but you're creating a whole new generation of Star Wars lovers. You've got the opportunity to continue to build this franchise with new ideas. They built Batuu to not be representative of new or old or existing, just different. So that was the whole concept, but behind Batuu is that it didn't have connection to other places. It was its own Star Wars entity. So the argument that you can't bring characters in from other movies or changing it around, that bothers me. So I think Batuu gives you the opportunity to use any Star Wars character. To Mark mentioning earlier, his kids love Jar Jar Binks. Could you imagine watching Jar Jar Binks walk around Galaxy's Edge with his goofy little footwork and traveling around and go standing by the land speeders and talk down to the kids and say stuff over there like where Rey and the stormtroopers wind up getting up and Chewie? If he was looking down on Jar Jar Binks would be amazing. That would be, he'd overtake Chewie as the most popular character in Galaxy's Edge. Like, there's so many different things that they could do that would just be amazing, that I just feel they haven't stepped up to what the feedback was yet on what they need to improve there. And I feel like Disney is very slow to respond to fan requests. And May the 4th grew into this amazing experience, and now they're capitalizing on it. The need, the want, the desire for people to see more is there. Bring it. Come on, Disney. Step up and bring some more.
Yeah, I agree. And to Hawks, or actually, Mark even said the Backlot Express has an amazing hamburger. While I agree it's a good hamburger, it actually got me to thinking, though, that Backlot Express might be another place where you could cement and make that whole area much more cohesive by taking that Backlot Express, use that space, and redo it into a Star Wars themed actual dining, not the cargo bay, but an actual. I think an actual table service.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
You do the cantina, and it's a real cantina, and you do a true Star Wars restaurant that, and you do have, think of, everybody remembers Chuck E. Cheese or something like it. But think about having the actual cantina band, do all that. I mean, that would be awesome. I mean, people would.
It would be awesome, and
they would pay money to go to Hollywood Studios just to go have dinner at the cantina.
And we've talked about that they should have mirrored Oga's and built an adult version over 21 with live entertainment that they could have put in there, where you could go in and then have the family version of the bar. They should have had two sides to Oga and literally mimic them one of each other, because I guarantee they'd both be full all the time.
But if they've got that, if they're not going to use that Jedi Training Academy area, there's dead space. Use the dead space. Use the Force. Use the dead space, and encompass that into part of that. And maybe that's where you do have a kids version, part of the cantina or whatever like that.
I just wish they would have unified the land in entirety, because it is weird to walk out of Launch Bay, walk by Little Mermaid, walk through Toy Story, and then stumble back into here's Galaxy's Edge. And it's also, I just saw Chewie over here. What's he doing over there? Like, there's same with Kylo. Just stood in line to meet Kylo. Now I'm bumping into him in the land on the other side of the park. So you want to talk about continuity and keeping the magic for kids. That makes kids ask questions. Kids aren't silly. I mean, I would love to see that kind of environment put together in one spot. I understand there's space constraints, but I mean, they have so much opportunity. So like Matt and Megan, I'm kind of curious, what would you guys want to see that could, because they still have the Galaxies, they still have the Star Cruiser too. Like, talking about a whole nother entity of space that could have been utilized for something else, Star Wars. What would you guys like to see Disney do with Star Wars to kind of bring things together?
So we talk a lot about how the littlest kids are kind of overlooked in a lot of places. We talk about, how we wish that Disney Junior might be a little bit expanded to getting those little kids. The Young Jedi show on Disney Plus is a huge hit with little kids. Yoda is part of that show. I think he may be the only like known Star Wars character that's in there. I haven't paid too much attention to it, but it'd be great to see that show come in, and Yoda's presence I think would be phenomenal in other ways, not just on Star Tours when you happen across him, if you get that ride. So I'd love to see that. Again, that idea of like drawing in the whole family, still pulling in the younger kids. Hollywood Studios, huge complaint of families with small kids is that Hollywood Studios is a half-day park because there's not enough for their little ones to do. Give us a little bit more of, Disney's trying to pull in the younger generation starting with the Young Jedi, so you can capture them at toddlers and then pull them all the way through the storylines and the characters and the shows and the movies and all of it. Where is that in the park? Give that to us in the parks too. So I think they're missing that piece. They're missing the whole family. My kids are not old enough, and a lot of kids aren't old enough for the, quote unquote real Star Wars stuff, right? So you gotta, if you want to get them when they're little, you got to get them in the parks as well as on Disney Plus.
That actually could be maybe there's your retheming of Launch Bay, is it becomes an an extension of Disney Junior, and it kind of comes around the corner there, and you have the Young Jedis and doing all that, so that it becomes part of essentially Kids Corner at Hollywood Studios.
You can still bring back the Jedi training at that point because that pulls from it too. Bring it back.
Matt, what do you think?
So I think this the biggest issue, which we've pretty much exhausted at this point, is just the cohesiveness of everything with Star Wars and Hollywood Studios. Like Hawk said, you walk, the launch bay is on one side of the park, basically. You walk through, you go by Mickey's Runaway Railway, you go through Toy Story, and you're back into Star Wars, and you're going to hop into Monstropolis for a brief second, then it's more Star Wars. So it's like everything, this is all spread out within the park. When they built that area, I don't know what the logistics would have been, but how to get everything kind of in one area. So you kind of feel like you're definitely more in Star Wars or Galaxy's Edge. Like everything is in that one section of the park. You don't see Toy Story anywhere else really in the park, as far as lands are concerned. So as far as like little kids, it all depends on, I would say, preference. My kids don't clamor for Star Wars. So that's more just like, hey, if you're into Star Wars, you get your kids into Star Wars. If not, so be it. But I definitely like expanding like the Disney Junior section of the launch bay and having like the Jedi training experience. I wish I could have done that when I was younger. I think I was probably a teenager at that point, so I was a little too old for that. But to have my kids do it now, I think they'd love it. Just going up there and just feeling like they're part of a show. So, but I think, like I said, the biggest thing I have with the whole Star Wars thing is just it's too spread out in the park itself.
Hollywood Studios to me is like the contemporary. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's kind of disjointed in places. It's not. That's that hotel and that park. I can see that.
Yeah, and the problem is it's going to be near impossible now to really address it because you're having to move stuff, and that's just not going to happen. And a couple of last comments here before we wrap things up. Mark said that
it's a great idea.
Yeah, wonder if there's a way to play up Star Tours as a travel agency, brought to you by certain travel agency friends like Megan and I, introducing you and inviting you to Batuu. That'd be actually a great way to do it. And it would be amazing, he says, to figure out a way to use Star Tours as a transport to Galaxy's Edge, get you on at Hollywood Studios and get off on Batuu, almost kind of a la like a Hogwarts Express going in between the two. That could be kind of interesting too. That would require some interesting dynamics, but you have to figure out how that would. You have to jump Monstropolis, but you never know.
So Chuck, before the show, we talked a little bit about a hidden Mickey.
Yeah, go ahead and share that. This is an awesome hidden Mickey. I never knew about this one, and I have to admit, I know a lot about hidden Mickeys, and I didn't know this one.
So we learned about this one a couple of years ago, and if you do go over to Launch Bay, and I'm trying to see if my screen will. It's blocking me out for some reason. It's not letting me share. So we might have to hold this to another show. I'm going to try one more time real quick.
I will admit this is a very interesting one. It requires a lot of light.
Here we go. So if you go into launch bay and you walk in and you go to the left, not when you first walk in, but when you get down to the section where you're going to be meeting the characters, and you'd be walking in and turning right to go down the stairs to go to Chewbacca or Kylo or Darth or whoever's out, or BB-8. If you go to the left when you enter that doorway, there's some models and sets that are in glass cases over there. One of them is this starship. And in that starship, there is a little window, and I don't know if you can see it. I'll use my mouse, but this window right here.
For those who are listening right now, where he is pointing to is the Tantive 4, and this is the main cockpit off the front of the ship.
Yep. And this is the little window that you would be looking out. And what's amazing about it is some ingenious Imagineer. And I asked the manager of this area to come over and give me the story on this, and he was unaware it was even there and was very excited when I showed it to him that he could teach his cast that this hidden Mickey was there. There is actually a small sticker. You have to turn your flash on your camera because it looks like it's tinted out. But there is a small sticker in there that says Star Wars and is Mickey and Minnie with a lightsaber. And it is inside that. It is not visible to the naked eye without a flash, without really diving. And you do have to get a certain little bit of an angle on it. You kind of have to, it's not straight on. If you shoot it straight on, you'll see a little bit of the sticker, but you have to get a little bit above it and shoot down, and you can get that amazing little hidden Mickey. So if you have small kids, one of the things that kids really enjoy about Disney is being able to find those little hidden things that nobody knows about. And they could even ask a cast member if they knew and share that. It's a really cool little thing. So just something to consider and remember about Star Wars and some of the little bits that you can find that you wouldn't, hidden things right in front of you.
You would never know.
Disney World.
So I want to say a huge thank you to all of our, you've been elevated, all of our Jedi Masters now, Hawk, Megan, and Matt, for joining us as we talk all about Star Wars in a celebration of May the 4th, Star Wars Day, and of course today being Revenge of the Sith for episode 71 here of Mousekast. Hey, want to remind you, we do this live every Tuesday night, so thanks to Mark and Chris for joining us live tonight. We do this live every Tuesday night, 8:30 Eastern. You can find us either on Facebook at Mousekast 2025 or over at YouTube. Just search Mousekast. We're live every Tuesday night. And remember, that fourth Tuesday is always game night, so we have a lot of fun. Come and join the conversation. If you've been enjoying Mousekast, share out the fact that you have been watching Mousekast. Encourage other folks to attend and to join in the conversation. You're listening to Mousekast, or you're watching, depending on when you're listening to this, you're listening and watching Mousekast. This is the podcast where the mind meets the magic. And so until next time, may the Force be with you, and we'll see you.
Thanks you for listening to our show. When you let the mind meet the magic, it's where the deep thoughts flow. It's where the mind meets the magic. We dive a little deeper every time. Theme parks, cruise ships, and travel. If you don't listen, maybe